Hello, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here with you today. My name is Kэtrин МакLeod, and I am the President and CEO of ThinkTV in Canada. I'm here to share the results of a qualitative study that we did some time ago, and I hope that the insights and the knowledge that we gained will be of value to you as you tackle the challenge of promoting the power of television advertising within your market. I thought I'd start by sharing some quick facts about the Canadian marketplace. In a country of almost 38 million people, there were 121 million hours spent watching television yesterday. On average, Canadians watch about 25 hours of television a week, the vast majority of which is live. 90% of Canadians are reached by TV each and every week, and the average TV campaign in Canada will deliver 331 million impressions. If we take a look at the total media spend in Canada over the last 10 to 12 years, you'll see that we've experienced fairly robust advertising growth, about 33% during that time period, or $3.5 billion. The numbers for 2019 and 2020 are still not available as we don't have them from all the players, but we expect that the 2019 number will be significantly higher than 2018. Unfortunately, we anticipate that the 2020 number will decline as a result of the COVID virus, which has hit so many businesses so hard. In terms of market share, the growth in advertising spend that we saw during this same period has not been experienced equally by the various players. Digital is the clear winner here, going from only 17.4% of the market up to 53.8% of the market in 2018. That's remarkable growth. 2019, the market share is expected to be higher, and 2020 even higher still. Television, on the other hand, has declined. Well, it held flat until about 2013, when we saw it begin to steadily decline to 22.2% of the market. Notably, one advertising platform that has done kind of consistently well throughout this time period is out of home. Out of home, you'll see, had almost a 4% share in 2009 and grew to 4.6 in 2018. Considering the state of the rest of the industry, that is growth, and the only player to grow other than digital during that same time period. Faced with declining television revenue, our organization and industry organizations like ours around the world, along with marketing experts, started to publish quantitative study after quantitative study that confirmed the absolute power of television advertising to build brand, to drive sales and profits, and in almost every case better than digital advertising. At the same time, there was a myriad of reports about the dangers of ad bots, of fraud, and at the same time, concerns about the poor business practices of the big players in digital. And as we talked to the market about television, you would definitely get the naysayers, but the chorus of marketers that we spoke to was generally telling us, well, we love television. We know that it works. We think it's great, and we don't want to lose our television budget. The answer to that could only be, well, why are you pushing it into digital platforms? And the response inevitably was, if you were talking to an agency, well, the brand has asked us to put our money into digital because the CEO had a dinner the other night with the president of Google. And inevitably, if you were talking to a brand, the brand would tell you that it was the agency's recommendation to move all their money into Google and Facebook. Of course, this was unbelievably frustrating, not only for our organization, but for our shareholders who were trying to sell television advertising in our marketplace. So we decided to undertake a qualitative research approach. We engaged an anthropologist, someone from the outside our industry who was familiar with it, who had worked in technology, but not so familiar with broadcast that he might bring his own bias into it. And the idea was to use his expertise in ethnography to figure out the business-to-business relationship between marketers and media agencies, and what effect, or rather what human behavior was being exhibited during these relationships that was driving what the decision makers were doing with respect to media, not just their strategy and execution, but their views on digital and television, and what really was keeping them up at night. This is a snapshot of the methodology that we used for our research. As you can see, it was extremely straightforward, and I have to say it was relatively low cost. Of all the research that we've done, this was probably the least expensive, but in many ways the most meaningful. What we did was have 10 senior marketers engaged in in-depth interviews with our consultant. And these marketers came from brands in FMCG, in auto, retail, and tech. And when I say they were senior not just in terms of the responsibilities within their own organizations, they were senior in terms of years of experience. Each person, whether they had a manager title or a senior vice president title, had at least 10 years of experience as marketers. The participants themselves were recruited via a recruiting firm, and they were incentivized with an honorarium, a very small amount of money that we could give to them in cash or as a charitable donation in their name. And at the end, we had all of the transcripts of the conversations that were had with our consultant and the marketers, and we were able to analyze them. And out of those conversations, we developed a number of themes and some key insights that really helped us begin to understand what was happening in our marketplace. There's 3 overall themes that I want to talk to you about today, with a number of insights that support each. The first of these themes is how marketers wish to be seen. Each and every participant in our research described themselves first and foremost as a creative person. And by creative, they used it not just in terms of artistic creativity, but creative as it encompassed almost every function throughout the course of their day. They want to be seen as innovative. Hand in hand with that innovation, of course, is being seen as someone who is forward-looking, anticipating the future, understanding what's around the next corner. And this lines up completely with what we know about marketers, what's often said, which is they're focused on the new shiny object. And that certainly proved to be true in the conversations that we were having. And not surprisingly, marketers wish to be seen as knowledgeable in their jobs. But knowledgeable in their jobs extends well beyond the task that's in front of them on their desk. They want to be seen as being plugged in to what's happening, not just within the marketing industry, but within society at large. As part of being plugged into what was going on, marketers that we spoke to wanted to be seen as connected. They needed to be seen as having the right group of people around them, the right network. They wanted to be surrounded by thought leaders, influencers, future thinkers, people that could raise their profile, but also give them the information that they needed to impress others in their own organizations. The other word that we heard most commonly used by the marketers in terms of how they wish to be seen was insightful. So this goes beyond knowledge. It's taking the information and data points that may be available to a number of individuals and taking that information and seeing something that other people can't see. This ability not only reflects a deeper understanding of the information, it also reflects a person who's thinking at a different level. Once we understood how marketers saw themselves and how they wished to be seen by others, we wanted to get a better understanding of whether media was engaging with them at the levels that they described as being so important to them. So not surprisingly, they were very excited about creative execution. They were animated and dynamic and engaged when talking about production, the elements of production. So whether it was the physical shoot itself of a commercial or the casting or the storyboards, or the fact that they were using 4K cameras instead of regular HD 1080i. These elements spoke to the creative person that they first described themselves as. They did get somewhat engaged and excited about digital media planning and execution for a number of reasons I'll share with you. But most importantly, they weren't engaged at all about broadcast media planning and execution. As I mentioned, the marketers we spoke to became much more excited and engaged when discussing digital media than they were when they discussed broadcast media planning and execution. The level of understanding of digital as a tactical tool was extremely high. They knew and discussed many of the ways that they were able to iterate and test their campaigns, whether it was adjustments to the creative, to the copy, or the audience targeting. And what they really loved was this notion of real-time reporting that they were receiving, which was reminding them constantly that what they were doing as marketers was working. In stark contrast to what we saw with digital media, these same marketers knew very little about broadcast media planning and execution. In fact, beyond being able to tell us a number with respect to the GRPs they needed for a successful television campaign, broadcast media and planning is really thought of as a technical function, which is assigned almost entirely to their media agencies. They trust that their media agencies are going to develop a broadcast plan that is optimal for their brand, and they really aren't interested in the details. One additional note before we dig into our next theme. The majority of the participants we spoke with did not talk about their strategic brand objectives. Their focus really in their day-to-day is on their annual budgets, delivering exceptional results within those budgets, and competing well within Canada. They orchestrate and coordinate all the marketing functions with the agencies, and they attempt to maintain or exceed sales targets. There was no mention of a long-term brand strategy, and in fact, brand was seen in one of two ways, either as a category of advertising implementation, one which is associated with television and therefore has a high barrier to entry, or two, as a byproduct of ordinary advertising activities on a variety of platforms that eventually will build your brand. The next important theme that as an important social construct, the agency roundtable effectively constitutes an outsized sphere of influence. What does this mean practically? Well, in this high-trust environment, stability and the long-term relationships around the table are highly valued. Information shared in this environment is much more highly trusted by the marketers than it is from any other source. The converse of that, though, is that it's also an environment where critical questioning is minimized or suppressed, questioning by either party, and hidden agendas are much less likely to be recognized or called out. The importance of the agency relationship and this agency roundtable was reinforced when we asked marketers how they get their information, and they all said that primarily their number one source was emails and or information that was provided directly by their agency contacts. They also looked to websites, marketing sites in particular, conferences, blogs, LinkedIn, Facebook and Google, as well as vendor training events and webinars to provide information about marketing, about what's going on in the industry, etc. Now, this was the most fantastic moment in the research. This was when we asked whether they spoke to media salespeople directly. And they all said, no, we send those people to the agency. Which, of course, given what they've said about the agency roundtable and their relationship with the agency, is what they're supposed to do. And then we said, well, not even Facebook or Google? And then there would be a pause. We literally have 10 pauses on tape. And they would laugh and say, oh no, those guys are in here every other week. Now, this is a critically important piece because it indicates that there's a different class of vendor who has access to marketers under a different set of rules. So much so that at first blush, the marketers don't even consider them to be salespeople. And we'll see in a little while how this all comes together. The final theme to emerge from our research is this notion that each product or service has a performance side and an experience side. So in performance, we're looking at how well does the product do what it's designed to do. An experience is depicted in these two pictures of coffee. One depicts a paper cup with a plastic lid, and the other is an appealing, piping hot cup of coffee in a ceramic mug, presented to you out of doors on a beautiful day. The experiences and which one is more appealing or pleasant or interesting or engaging is obvious. And in the same way, and in perhaps not such an obvious way, advertising media is itself a product. And we have to be concerned not just with the performance of that product, but with the experience of using it. This distinction between product performance and product experience played out with the marketers in our conversations about digital versus broadcast media. Overwhelmingly and interestingly, when marketers spoke about digital media, they spoke only about their experience with it. They didn't talk about the performance of it, just the experience of working with it. They talked about how they iterated their campaigns. They talked about how they improved their targeting. They talked about optimizing the copy in order to attract the right audience. All of these elements are positive in and of themselves, but more importantly, each of them spoke to their need to be seen as innovative, knowledgeable, forward-thinking, insightful, not to mention creative. In addition to these positive experiences, digital media does an excellent job at reinforcing its value. Digital media articulates its value to marketers before, during, and after campaigns. Before, during, with the interactive planning and pricing that we've talked about, also through the ongoing real-time reporting that allows you to move and tweak and iterate. And then finally, with this implied correlation of user response with messages of impact achieved. A marketer could receive a message every day, every minute of every day if they wanted to, that your advertising media, the choices you've made, are working. It's working, it's working, it's working. When you take all of these things combined, it's not too difficult to see why advertisers don't get that upset when Facebook has a problem with its numbers, for instance. There's no outrage. Rather, what we understood from the marketers at the time was that we had to take all of the numbers with a grain of salt, that even broadcasters made up their numbers. Our conversations with marketers revealed a key insight about digital media. Digital media has done an exceptional job of building a user experience that seizes upon and provides the things that make marketers feel good about themselves. In contrast, television presents to marketers as a black box. Of course, a black box is a device, process, or system whose inputs and outputs are understood to be working, but whose internal workings are a complete mystery. What we learned from our research was that when marketers spoke about television, they did it almost exclusively in terms of performance. Television is understood to be working by all the marketers we spoke to, but the experience is virtually non-existent. When you contrast that to digital, where they've created a user experience that not only reinforces good feelings for marketers, it also provides value-adding messages throughout. Television provides virtually no experience whatsoever. We know that the planning that goes on, planning and pricing, is handled almost exclusively by the media agencies who prefer to do it. We know that the reporting that would normally go on in real time through digital media doesn't happen during the course of a television campaign. Many times, the reporting isn't done until many months after the campaign is complete and the marketer has moved on to something else. So what we've got is a marketer that feels like they lack any type of agency over their television campaigns. Television delivers on the performance side, but it doesn't fulfill the second part of the equation of a product, which is a compelling or pleasant or interesting or engaging user experience. In fact, many of the marketers that we spoke to weren't even aware of when their television commercials were on the air. All of this research told us one important thing. Marketers are human beings, and what they know is often less important than how they feel. And digital has capitalized on this truth. And that, in part, is one of the reasons why performance issues around digital media are often overlooked. When we completed this research in 2019, there was a number of things that we decided to do to recommend to our broadcast shareholders as important to move the industry forward. We wanted broadcasters, and they have, increased the amount of time they've spent face-to-face with advertisers. They've increased the amount of client direct business that they do, trying to create greater touch points for advertisers to engage with broadcasters directly. We as an organization at ThinkTV have tried to create value add for marketers, and we've encouraged broadcasters to do the same by focusing on verticals and category expertise through our training and events. In particular, we rolled out a huge piece of research by Accenture, which examined the ROI that television delivers in 4 categories: automotive, CPG, over-the-counter pharmaceuticals, and telecommunications. That research was very successful, and Accenture reached out to 50 of the biggest brands in the country and attended at their offices to present this research and how individually they could improve their businesses. We also work to improve the experience of buying and selling television. Our broadcasters are rolling out advanced advertising in a meaningful way now, which will of course provide better opportunities to target, as well as more frequent and timely reporting. We're developing and delivering cross-media platform measurement in 2021 through our measurement organization, Numeris. And just recently, we, as broadcasters in ThinkTV, adopted a group of common ad segments. Normally, and for a long time, we've only traded on age in Canada. There's common age groups that we trade. Instead, now we're looking at adding, and we have added, these common ad segments based on third-party data that include psychographics and age demographics in order to give advertisers a seamless opportunity across broadcasters to plan to buy these different audiences. And the response so far has been great. Those are just some of the few of the things that we did, and we've got lots of work to do as we move forward. I hope that this presentation was. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that this presentation has been useful for you. Should you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. The organizers have my contact information. Thank you again, and all the very best to you for the rest of the conference.